Hello everybody and welcome to this week's Totem Tuesday. Hello from myself, Laura, and also from Dr. May, the badger on my shoulder. And of course, this week we're going to be looking at the amazing energy of the badger. Now, I think if Dr. May could just go down here a little bit. Off you go. She's a female badger, Dr. May. Off you go. Of course, we would really appreciate if it was the real, not saying you're not real, but Dr. Brian May here talking about badgers with me. But in the substitute of Dr. Brian May, we've got Dr. May, my badger, who has been on many journeys and protests about badger rights. So she's going down here for just a second. Okay, yeah. Okay, so this week we're going to be looking at badger. And at this point, in Great Britain particularly, it is a very, very important time to be respecting, honouring and thinking about badgers, as the date of this video is March 2013. Don't ask what the date, I think it's the 5th of March 2013. And this is a critical time because our government are planning on mass cull extermination of badgers to try and prevent bovine TB. And without going into the science, because again, like last week, this is not a protest video, this is just laying out the story of where the badgers are at the moment, really, and I think that's quite important. That washing up, the washing up almost went for a fall over there in a second, it's fine. The washing up is safe till later. But basically, where in this country at the moment, the government have gone against all science and all morals and sanity to be thinking of culling badgers, and I completely sympathise with the farmers that bovine TB does need to be addressed, does need to be faced. However, culling is not the answer, and that's just not my opinion because I love badgers. Culling is not the answer because it's scientifically proven to be not the answer. There's many other ways that can be researched and looked into which could help stop or slow down the spread of bovine TB. However, looking at the experimental culls that they've got planned, the culling could actually make it worse. But what the culling will definitely do will destroy many, 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 many innocent lives of badger sets and badger families. But maybe I'll do another protest video about badger stuff, but this is about the badger as a totem. But I think it's important, as I did last week with the dolphins, to state not just the myth and the energy, but also the real situation where we're at now. Because if you're working with badger as your totem, or if badger has appeared in your life recently, you know, that you may want to work on protesting or whatever it is, really, just lobbying your MP or signing petitions, maybe that's something you would want to do. Because, well, there's so many things we're talking about today about the badgers, because they, with their black and their white markings, badgers can have very opposite symbology that work with them. And at this time, as we're approaching the spring equinox, equal dark and equal light, black and white, light and dark, night and day, I thought that a badger is a really perfect animal to be speaking about at the equinox. So, badgers in the practical sense, in Europe, in the UK, here we are, badgers are slightly different to they are in America. American badgers are slightly larger than we have here in Europe, and also they are solitary animals, whereas when they live in dens that they build, which are generally quite small compared to the European badgers, who have massive family sets. They can build in Europe. Badgers are far from solitary. They live often in quite big communities, in big families, and they will dig sets with many, many rooms. And it's the dens are very organised. The dens are very, very clean. They tidy their dens. They take the dirty bedding out backwards and allowing it to clean up after them and to take it out of the set and bring in new bedding. So they're very clean and tidy animals. So that's one thing, if badgers come into your life, maybe it's time to organise, maybe it's time to sort the home out, to be clean and to be tidy. They're mainly carnivores, so they probably will eat a little bit of everything. They eat vegetables as well. And in the UK, they are, not just being, because I live here, they are slightly cuter. The European badgers are slightly cuter looking than the American badgers, who look a little bit more aggressive. However, as you probably know, if you've looked at anything to do with badgers, aggression is something that's really, really linked to badger energy. The badger is called Broc in Druid folklore and in Gaelic language, so Broc. And there's a band that we've heard a few times with my partner Vinci called Broc the Bard, and that will link me to another thing about badgers that's really, really important, which I'll talk about in just a second because that's another section. But yeah, I'm on aggression, and badgers, you know, anyone that's been chased by a badger or anyone that's has come face to face with a badger and maybe has accidentally stumbled upon their den, upon their home, will know that they are really quite feisty. They may look cute, but they are quite feisty. And even though not ones to look for fights, they're not outwardly aggressive looking for fights, but if they feel threatened or if they're put into a corner, they will fight for all their worth. They're known to also to fight to the death at times. So the most powerful energy that, you know, that is known about badger is not just aggression for aggression's sake. It's, I'm not looking for a fight, no, but if you corner me, you know, this is fighting for everything, fighting for your rights, fighting for what's important to you, and people that are working to protect the badgers from the cull. It's interesting that energy is going to be called for so much. Badger energy in itself will be called for to fight the cull, because this is sticking to your guns and saying this is not right and I'm going to fight for it and I will not be moved. Tenacity, determination are very strong characteristics of the badger, and also could be strong characteristics of people who have badger as a totem. Badgers have been persecuted and they have been, well, they've been culled in various places in Europe and America over the centuries. Farmers would have in the past actually got rid of whole families or whole sets because it had got in the way of their land, or they thought that the badgers were going to be eating their seeds or their crops or scaring the animals off. So basically badgers have been seen as a pest and to be got rid of. But if we can look back before this time and look back at the real energy of badgers, if people got over their self-importance and maybe realise animals can teach us a thing or two, that badgers would have taught primitive man the roots and the vegetables that were safe to eat and those which are poisonous. So they dig and they scavenge, and roots is something we'll talk about in a second, is very important with badgers, but roots and digging for the good medicine, the good energy, and separating what's good for you and what's bad for you is important with badger energy. So there's so much badgers can teach us, and they kind of have been so persecuted over the years that, you know, to badger someone is now a saying, isn't it? Oh, I'm sorry, you're badgering me, which means you're annoying me, you know, you're stopping me. So it's been very unfortunate that over the years they just haven't got along with what, you know, I guess the way people want to rule the countryside. But many, many, many people love badgers, and many people are up for fighting for them. They are mainly nocturnal animals, so they are able to go around in the day and the night, but they're mainly nocturnal animals. And also they do stay away from humans. They've got very good hearing and senses, so they do stay away from humans if they can. Well, they usually do. I've seen if you can gain up a nice relationship and you live in the countryside or near the countryside, I have seen some lovely shots of badgers coming into the gardens at night to eat vegetables that left out for them, food that's been left out for them. So far from solitary in this country, badgers are quite sociable with their own sort. However, in America, as I mentioned, they are solitary creatures. So depending on what sort of badger energy you're feeling, if you're from the USA, you may feel more drawn to the solitary badger energy. If you're from Europe, you may feel drawn to the more family and social orientated badger. There's with their digging, they can actually dig quicker than any man in a shovel can, even any woman in a shovel. They can dig really, really quickly, and their link to digging underground and living underground heavily relates them to the underworld, to looking beneath the surface, to seeing deeper into things. So they are linked to the elementals of the earth, the spirits of the earth, however you may see them, the fairies, the elementals, the creatures and beings of the earth, the gnomes in fairy tale and lore. They're also representing the hidden self, what is under the surface. So if badger does come into your life, maybe they're showing you to look underneath the surface, not at what's obvious, but look underneath at the motives, at the root of the issue. And root is something we'll come back to again and again with badger energy. Their connection to the earth is all about, also shows us about grounding. It also shows us about connectedness, keeping things practical, keeping down to earth. They are also, actually, I found this out recently, and I did know that badgers were linked to divination, but I wasn't quite sure why. And if you look back to the history of this, it's not a lovely way, but we talk about it here, that it was thought that if you killed a badger, which you shouldn't do, and took every part of its body out but left its blood, and looked into the blood would reflect your future. And it was, I think I read that if you saw yourself quite brightly in light, then you'd live to a grand old age, da 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 da. If the image was disturbed or you saw something different, then you'd either have a shorter life, or you'd have a lesser joyful fate. And so that's been brought down, that linking badgers is actually energy to divination even. So any kind of scrying with water, with glass, with crystal, or a black surface, so like an obsidian mirror to scry. And if you're working with badger energy, you may want to try scrying. You may want to give that a go. Also with badger, as I mentioned, is the roots and the herbs. So herbal lore is something that you're interested if you're working with badger energy. Roots and medicines and healing is something we're going to look at now, because badger energy was to the old tribes of America and also of this country and Europe mostly about healing. Now, badger energy is similar to bear energy with healing, yet bear and badger claws or bear claws would have been used within healing ceremonies, paws and claws. For what I read was that for the males of the tribe, bears would be used because they're bigger and the men are bigger. But for women and for children, badger paws and claws would be used for healing for women and children. And in ceremonies, the badger claw would be used, whether symbolically or realistically, to claw out the illness or the whatever the problem was. And that links to today's Reiki technique. Not that we claw people get clawed in Reiki, but the idea of taking out the negativity or the illness or the issue within the person, so clawing it out. These days, of course, people don't often use in healing a badger paw, but the symbology of drawing or painting a badger paw onto a healing instrument, a tool, can be quite a powerful thing to do in this day and age. So we've looked, as I said, the black and the white of it, the light and the dark of it, aggression and fighting with badger, which leads them to being very highly revered by warriors and would have been revered by warrior tribes and warrior races. Because they're supreme, as I said, they're supreme fighters, they're very strong, they're tenacious, they don't give up. I've read tales of, I think it's in the 1700s, and at a time when they're trying to badger bait, and basically the badger would not give up, and this stupid person set his dogs out on the badger, and he was fighting all of them. Yeah, so the warrior, the fighter, but also the healer. So you've got the light and the dark, or the opposites there, the injuring and the healing coming in with badger energy. So the spiritual warrior, but also the healer, would be something that maybe if you're working with badger energy that you would be looking into. So healing is a great thing to be looking at with badger energy, going deep, as I said, digging underneath the surface, going deep to the root cause of the issue, taking it out and looking at it. I always feel with badgers it's that on one hand it's very straight talking. There's something that they'll tell you just how it is. You'll be seen with badger energy, or a badger person will tell you just how things are, whether it's going to be upsetting to you or not. But in another way, badgers are not what they seem. So there's a sense of illusion, and something you have to work out, because they're very muscular animals, they're very muscular creatures, but they've got quite loose skin. So they look quite sweet and cute and not so strong, but they are very strong. So on one level, you've got the communication of just maybe cutting or rough talking in a way. This is how it is. But another way, you've got the illusion and the shape shifting. Now, one thing I want to talk about with badgers, because they get a bit of a bad rep, and from my childhood, what I remember about badgers is Mr. Badger in Wind of the Willows, and there's other few stories that I read as well, where the lovely, gentle old character was Badger, who was so wise and just had so many stories to tell. And this is I think one of the most important things about badger energy. Is the storyteller, the keeper of stories, the one that writes things down and passes on stories from generation to generation. Of course, badgers are much older than humans are, and their stories are very, very old. And the energy of badger is as a storyteller. And I remember, as I said, I remember from being little, badgers appearing in stories, these lovely, wise characters who would relax and calm you and tell you a story, who would enchant you with stories. Yes, they could also be a bit grumpy, but when you got on their right side, they would tell you the most magical stories. And in some, I was reading, it was saying that sometimes stories are more important than food to keep you alive, to keep you inspired, I think to keep your soul alive, to keep you inspired by wonderful tales and wonderful stories. So a storyteller, a writer, someone that's creating, would be wise to check in with badger energy. There was something here that I was reading. Oh yeah, in the Welsh tale, a badger is mentioned as a guide during dreaming as well. So maybe with dream work, again, you've got the nocturnal animals. Maybe that's the energy there. The storytellers, the weaver between the worlds. But you may want to look at, if you're working with dreams, tuning into badger energy to go on that journey. Let me see if there's anything else here that I haven't mentioned. The very strong jaws, and I thought, oh yeah, that's it. The strong jaws can sometimes mean real stubborn and saying things and sticking to them, and maybe not being sensitive to the things they say sometimes. We also had fearless and fierce. We've had that as well. The direction that's linked with badger is the north and the ancestors, north and the old ones. Oh yeah, that's what I wanted to mention. Something I learned when I was doing the protesting for the badgers last year was someone was telling me that the mating season for badgers in Europe is June and July. However, they delay the pregnation. That's probably not the right word, but they delay it for several months. Actually, 7 to 8 months. So there may be multiple partners or multiple occasions of mating, yet they will kind of store the egg until the right time, which is 7 or 8 months later. And the little babies, the baby badgers, are born between February and April. And as they are quite social in this country, and they'll stay together as a family until the young badgers are of a mating age, and they'll be kicked out of the set. So they'll stay there until they're at mating age themselves, and they'll be kicked out to find their own way in life. So if you're drawn to badger energy, you know, there's with all animal energies, there's kind of the positive and negative traits that come through. The fearless warrior, the fighter, the storyteller is the positive traits. And maybe the the overbossy, the kind of rough to the point, upsetting people's feelings, sticking to your guns a little bit when other people are upset by it. That's not a negative trait, but that could be something that you could watch. Maybe you know that as part of your own personality and go, yeah, I am a bit like that. Maybe I should watch it a little bit. Maybe not, you know. But usually find if you've got someone in your life who is, you think, they seem to be quite badger person, that if they're quite strong, they do things their own way, they get success, but they don't think about other people so much. Be aware that maybe underneath the surface they could be a little bit insecure, and they're using their fighting techniques so that they can get where they want, but they probably are gentler souls underneath. So working with determination to get what you want and healing and divination are all very powerful ways of working with badger energy. And from me and Dr. May, I think that'll be all for today. But if you're interested in signing the petition to protect the badgers from the cull, do look up the website on Team Badger, or look at the Badger Trust website, because that will give you some information on how you can get involved with saving the badgers. I will see you next week. Have a lovely one.